is going to be born and is going to owe the federal government before he ever takes a breath of life. We've got to do something, folks, and we've got to stand up. Thanks for people like you. Thanks for people like you.
And you bet. All right.
And I should remind us that there's a lot of good groups. It's not just Americans for Prosperity that's working with spendingrevolt.com. We've got a group called 60 Plus. Have you heard of 60 Plus? Have you heard of AARP? Okay. All right. So you understand AARP. You should not belong to the AARP. You should join 60 Plus. That's your group for that is a group that supports seniors and supports senior issues, but from a free market perspective, so that it's not all about let's get more and more from the government and get people more and more dependent on the government so that they're afraid every single time the government threatens to take any services away. That's unfortunately something that was foisted upon this country quite a long time ago, but we're now in a situation where so many people, especially who are seniors, especially if you're past the age where you can work, or at least work really productively, you're afraid because you're afraid of you're afraid every day of what the government might do, what they might do to your Medicare Advantage plan, what they might do to your Social Security. You're afraid because the government giveth and the government taketh away. And that's a very scary place to be. So you want to join groups like 60 Plus that are out there looking out for seniors from a free market point of view. We're working with Citizens Against Government Waste, another great group that's out there fighting for our interests. Also a group called Concerned Women for America. So Americans for Prosperity is not the only group that's supporting the spendingrevolt.com bus tour. But
yes, sir. Do we have a microphone to you, sir? I thought we had a mic coming. There we go.
I handed it back. I'm sorry. We're paying the government $77,000 average for jobs, while the average person in the private sector is making 40. I mean, you can't do that. We're all talking the same thing. I mean, the government is just completely out of touch. But I just spoke with one of, I'm not going to mention his name, one of the representatives that's going for the House in Tucson. And I mentioned his cutting his salary. He says, I just don't think I can get that pushed through the Congress. And I'm sitting there saying, another progressive, I have another rhino. I mean, I've joined the Republican Party to defeat McCain. And I'm going back independent. I mean, but this is what I'm saying. I mean, we have people here that say they're in Congress, but we send them off and they do something 180 degrees from what they say. You had brought up something of signing a legal contract that if you don't vote for this, you resign. We have your resignation paper.
Let me just tell you, sir, that look, nothing about this is automatic. In 1994, a new majority took over the House of Representatives. Remember Newt Gingrich, the contract with America, and all that. I said at the time, I don't believe it. I've been in politics. I'm not only a recovering attorney, I'm a recovering politician. And I said, I don't believe him. I went down and read that list. I don't think these guys are going to do this stuff. So in January of '95, I said to my listening audience, okay, we're all getting on a plane and we're flying to Washington and we're going to camp out and we're going to make them come on the air and say they're going to actually do this on the air now that they're elected. It's all well and good in the campaign rhetoric. Now what are they doing now in the middle of winter? There's no tourists in Washington in January. We were there, got these great hotel rooms for cheap, took 200 people, paid their own way. Newt Gingrich put us in the basement of the Capitol building, the first radio program ever to be in the Capitol building. We got all of them down there, the leadership, and a lot of members, and we made them on the record say, yes, I'm for this, and some of them surprisingly said, no, I'm not for that. For instance, people that I love, like Duncan Hunter, was not for term limits. He said, no term limits, I don't want to leave here, I want to stay here and do the job I came here to do. So it was interesting how we got different reactions after the election. But for the most part, because we stuck it to them, because we got on top of them, because we stayed with it, you know, you can't just go away and expect them to do the right thing. I'm sorry, that isn't the way it works. It's every day. So we stayed on them, and when we stayed on them, what happened by the end of that decade? We had a balanced federal budget for the first time in decades. We had welfare reform that for the first time since the 30s took the entitlement out of aid to dependent women and children. We had a going through of all of those line items to take stuff out of that budget. We didn't have fancy farm programs. We didn't have Medicare add-ons. We didn't have all this crazy stuff that came with Bush. At the end of the 90s, That thing was running pretty well because we had a Democrat president who was actually working with the Congress to balance the budget. And you disagree, go ahead. Yeah, but that's the idea, sir. It's not, they're not going to do it out of the goodness of their heart. Can you get a microphone to this gentleman? We need to have him on tape. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, look at every Tea Party that's been out there, and they have pushed things down our throat. They don't care about us. They are voting whatever they want to do. I mean, your voice is non-existent today.
That's not true. And let me tell you why. Because on the surface, looking at the mainstream media, that's exactly what you get. You Tea Party extremists don't matter. We're going to do what we're going to do. Pelosi will tell you all day long, I know what's right and I'm going to do it, and you crazy people are just going to learn to love it. You know, you'll find out what's in the bill after it's passed. You remember all that rhetoric? Because they're an ideologically rigid group in the ruling elite in Congress. They do not care. That's why we have to replace them with Americans who do care. That's the whole point. All right. All right,
Roger, we're going to go 5 more minutes.
Okay.
And then wrap it up.
All right.
Yes, I'd like to start out with the distant past. We were the ones as a nation that pushed free, open borders from every aspect years ago when we had an excess of everything. We had an excess of balance of payments and everything. Now I come along and we got Social Security. If Social Security, if we have the same ground rules now that Social Security went in with, it would be in a lot better situation, and most of the people in here would not be drawing Social Security today because it was set at 65 years old, and that's what the life expectancy was at that time. It would be 78 years old today. And all the things that's come on since Social Security come on, it's been changed, changed, and changed. Study after studies indicate that both parties have been equal in making changes about. We say tax increases or tax reductions. Well, my first tax return was 1948, and it was 90%. I never heard anyone bitching about it because we're in them after the war. It was 70 when Reagan took office. The debt was only $1 trillion when Reagan took office. It was $3 trillion when he left. Discretionary expenditures went up twice the rate of inflation, and I'm not sure I would classify that as being conservative. And go on from there. Today, I've seen all of this go from 1980 today. The deficit has been going up and up and up. And there's no, and Clinton did increase taxes. I'm not saying you should have increased taxes, but there's more than straight income tax. There's taxes of every type. Reagan put income tax down, but he had 3 tax increases in that period, one of them being the biggest of any president since 1966 to 2006. And this problem we have is not this current problem we're talking here. It's been here for 30 and 40 years. And the energy problem has been here since 1970. Thank you.
Listen, bipartisan all the way through. I'm with you 100%. The problem is that all that accumulated decision making has arrived at a point where we should have a bipartisan agreement that it's got to stop. Sir, it is unsustainable at this point.
Obama has just put it in high gear.
Yeah.
We were going down that road, and you do not get that impression from this discussion today.
That's exactly right.
It's been going on for 30 years, and all of us are part of it.
Now, the problem is, I don't want to pass away though and not correct the problem. This election, now listen to me, sir. This election might be our last chance to correct this problem. That's what I'm focusing on. That's what I'm focusing on.
And I did want to let you know, we started off at the very beginning, making sure everybody understood that this is not a problem that just started in the last couple of years. This has been with us.
Most of the discussion has been long term, and we have been right in the middle of all of it.
The system is so corrupt at this point that if you don't look at putting these people in prison, you're not going to get anywhere. They violate their oath, they act unconstitutionally, they reverse their campaign promises, they spend money they shouldn't be allowed to, they tolerate fraud, and you're thinking that a handful of new politicians who opportunistically come out of the woodwork by the tens for a single seat that's vacated, you're hoping that they will somehow magically not be corrupt. When these people face prison for what they've done to this nation,
Let me ask you something,
you'll see a
sir.
change.
I appreciate the emotion. Are you running for office?
No, I am not.
Why not?
I refuse.
How dare you come here and lecture the rest of us and not run for office?
How dare you bring politicians here to lecture us on spending?
Listen.
They are the problem.
You know, self-government requires that all of us be involved every day.
I am involved
and
every day.
And not expect that something is going to be great, you know, and perfect. The founders didn't found a perfect government. It's a human government. But they founded one based on a set of values they did expect us to adhere to. And in our time, right now,